and there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another fantastic installment of the program. From very high above all the puerile and insipid forms of Wyoming mainstream media, this is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Thursday. You know, my friends, when you look at the media, it seems to go in cycles, at least the national media anyway. And it's Trump's bad. His policies are bad. His policies are going to destroy the world. He's racist, and then it just kind of descends into the abyss of liberalism after that. And, you know, when I start show prep the night before, usually I'm just sitting on the couch with my iPad or my laptop, and I'll find an article that's interesting, and I'll just send it to the printer. And, you know, I generally speaking, I mean, it kind of varies with show to show, but usually I go through 10 or 12 articles in a given show. And, you know, I don't really keep track. I just send them to the printer, and then when I get up in the morning, I think, well, let's see what happened in the world while I was asleep, and start going through it. And this morning, after what I think are some interesting discussions on tariffs, the media kind of went into the descended into the abyss of liberal insanity. And so today's program is going to be a little bit lopsided. First, we're going to talk about some tariffs. And then there's a judge that's ruled against one of the Trump administration's plan on deportations, and specifically to remove Venezuelans from the protected list of immigrants, or whatever the Biden administration called it. There's a judge, and you guessed it, he called it racist. So, you know, no longer are we operating on the rule of law. No, we have district court judges that are operating on feelings, which I suppose, you know, most of the world operates on feelings anyway, so why shouldn't we extend that to law? And then, of course, there's a shocking report, well, not so shocking report out from Project Veritas that NASA and the State Department, yeah, they're still using DEI, and they've got it on camera. So I've got a bit of sound from that one. And then, again, we're going to have, and here's the other thing. You see, I'm so flabbergasted by what I saw this morning that I can hardly get it out. But the media is reporting that 1 in 15 Americans has witnessed a mass shooting. Think about that. 1 in 15. That means in my little neighborhood here at the Cowboy State Politics headquarters that that there's at least one person in my neighborhood that's witnessed and watched a mass shooting go down. Absolutely absurd. But, you know, when the facts don't agree with liberals, they have to make them up. And they do so in a way to just generate fear. And, I mean, really, that's all the media has, the media and the left. That's the only thing they've got to run on. And so they're doing that. So let's begin this morning with the Washington Post. In an article entitled, Trump Aides Draft Tariff Plans as Some Experts Warn of Economic Damage. Now think about this. There are most countries around the world have tariffs on American goods. And it's a tax that if you want to sell your product overseas, then you're going to pay whichever country their fee. And some of these tariffs range from 60% over and above the listed price, or the, what we would call here in in the States, the manufacturer's suggested retail price. So some companies are charged 60% over that. Most companies charge around 30%. So a third more than what you want to sell your product for. Well, if you think about it, most things that are produced in America are actually pretty great. We make a lot of really great products. And so if you introduce those into a market that really doesn't have that strong of a manufacturing base, of course, people are going to want to buy the higher quality product. And so various countries charge that tariff over and above so that the price can be artificially raised, and then that will force citizens of whichever country to buy the homegrown version instead of the USA made version of whatever product you're talking about. But there's really no definitive answer as to what these tariffs are going to do. But I've got, let's see here, sitting right in front of me, I've got at least 4 different pieces that Trump's tariffs are going to destroy the economy. But nobody really says how. They don't really say that it's going to do X, Y, or Z to the economy. It's just some broad claim that says, this is going to create economic destruction. Anyway, let's get into this Washington Compost piece. And I quote, White House aides have drafted a proposal, and then we saw that one revealed yesterday, to impose tariffs on about 20% of most imports into the United States. 3 people familiar with the matter said that as President Trump pushes for the most aggressive overhaul of the global economic system in decades, if implemented, the plan is likely to send shockwaves through the stock market and the global economy, assuming that permanent tariffs took effect in the current quarter and triggered robust retaliation by U.S. trading partners. The economy would almost immediately tumble into a recession and would last for more than a year. Think about, all right, so they're making these claims. How do they back them up? Let's see here. A recession that would last more than a year, sending the jobless rate above 7%, according to Mark Zandi, chief economist for Moody's, who described the result as a worst-case scenario. So let's talk in reality what tariffs do, and use Canada, for instance. Is there really anything that Canada produces that Americans just have to have? Really? I mean, maple syrup? No, I think we're good on maple syrup. We get enough of that from Vermont. So we don't really need that. Hockey? No, we don't really need any hockey. We don't have to worry about that. What other products are produced in Canada, except for bad television hosts, or currently bad television hosts? What products are produced in Canada that we actually need that can't already be produced here? I can't think of a single one. So what is the tariff actually going to do? So it is going to raise the price or increase the tax on those products that are exported from Canada to the U.S. And think about it. The U.S. is a manufacturing giant. We've got a huge country, and there's a lot of different products that we manufacture. When you compare that with Canada, not so much. So if Canada wants to sell those few products that they do manufacture in the U.S., well, they have to pay more. Well, it makes sense. And here's the reason why. Because Canada imposes giant tariffs on the U.S. So the whole point of this is, look, man, if you don't want us to charge all these big tariffs on all your products, maybe you shouldn't charge tariffs on all of ours. And that is where all of this outrage and I don't even know what you want to call it, outrage is coming from, because all the vast list of countries have relied on the profit from tariffs for such a long time that they don't want to see that source of their income go down. That's what the problem is, because they don't want fair trade. They want unequal trade. They want a trade policy that benefits them, which you can't really blame country X, Y, or Z for wanting to do that. Of course they do, because it benefits them. If your economy is in no way comparable to the United States, of course you want to protect it. But the reality is, if it is fair trade, that is, we're not charging exorbitant tariffs on imports, and other countries are not charging exorbitant tariffs on our exports, well, then it's a free and open marketplace. And it is economics 101 that the good products will rise to the top, the crappy products will go to the bottom of the list. And so what it would do is force other countries to produce better products. It makes perfect sense in our heads. But these folks in the media, it's very difficult for them to understand what the heck is going on. Let's see here. The Trump presidency. The administration has for weeks been involved in extensive planning to announce new tariffs on Wednesday, which the president has dubbed Liberation Day, which it was. Yesterday, he unveiled all of his tariffs. White House officials have scoffed at economists' warnings, arguing that similar downbeat forecasts proved wrong when Trump imposed more modest tariffs during his first term. Administration officials insist the tariffs are needed to rebalance a global trading system that has discriminated against the U.S. for decades, making a hollow shell out of factories, communities, and across the nation. So do you know why we refer to the Rust Belt as the Rust Belt? Have you ever thought about that? Well, what rusts? Iron, metal, right. Well, when over the past 30 years, specifically when China was given most favored nation status, and other countries too, many companies switched their manufacturing base from the United States overseas. And so a lot of these factories we're not talking a small number of factories. We're talking like 100,000 factories were moved overseas. And so the empty buildings sat there rusting. That's why that area of the country is referred to as the Rust Belt. It's not because of some sort of weather phenomenon. It's not because of, the colors in nature. No, it is the colors from the rusting buildings that are left empty because manufacturing was moved overseas. Take pharmaceuticals, for instance. We really don't produce any pharmaceuticals in the United States anymore. Nope, there really isn't that many antibiotics that aren't produced in China. Tylenol, look at that one. When you have a headache from listening to all the fake news, where do you have to get your Tylenol from? China. There are so many products that come from overseas that we import, and it is a gigantic trade imbalance. Steel. You would think that the United States would be a global producer of steel. Pennsylvania and it's not. A lot of the steel has been produced by foreign countries and then dumped on the U.S. market. Well, what if we kind of evened the playing field a little bit and made sure that our products didn't have tariffs on it from countries overseas, and then we were able to produce and compete in a fair marketplace? What would happen? Well, American companies would produce higher quality products. This is not rocket surgery, as my friend Agent 29 puts it. It is just absolutely incredible. Now, listen to this. This is from CNN, and of course, they're peddling the Economist's doomsday scenarios. This one's entitled, "Europe Warns Trump, We Have a Strong Plan for Retaliation Against Tariffs." Listen to this. Quote, "Europe has a strong plan for striking back at the U.S. in response to Donald Trump's tariff hikes, if necessary," a top official said Tuesday on the eve of a long-anticipated announcement of massive import levies by the U.S. For weeks, Trump has promoted April 2nd as Liberation Day in America, when a number of hefty tariffs will be unveiled to implement his administration's radical economic agenda. Now, think about this. Creating a scenario where American companies can trade fairly with the rest of the world, that is somehow radical, according to CNN. Continuing, the United States has already announced a sharp increase in tariffs on all imports of steel, aluminum, and cars. Quote, "Europe has not started this confrontation," Ursula von der Leyen, the head of the European Union's executive, said in a speech. "We do not necessarily want to retaliate, but if it is necessary, we have a strong plan to retaliate, and we will use it." Retaliate for what, I ask? Retaliate for the United States not wanting to have giant taxes placed on all of our products so you can sell your cheap goods in the U.S.? Is that what you're retaliating on? Or are you retaliating against the creation of a fair economic trading system? That is what they are retaliating against, because right now it is extraordinarily unfair to U.S. companies in favor of European and Asian countries. That's the trade imbalance. It's not that these countries are being treated unfairly right now. It's that they absolutely have the scales tipped in their favor. And if you looked at the list of tariffs that Trump had yesterday when he unveiled all of them, I mean, it was a huge list. And countries like Cambodia imposing a 30% tariff on American goods. I mean, it's just absolutely insane that any American company, any American journalist would look at this in any other way and say that this is just rebalancing. What the European Union should do is say, okay, we'll drop the giant tariffs we have on American products and we'll compete on a fair playing field. But of course, they can't, and therein lies the problem. It is very difficult to compete with USA-made goods. And the reason for that? Well, like I said at the top of the segment, typically USA-made goods are of higher quality, and so other countries that are producing crap can't compete. Just absolutely insane, my friends. We'll continue with the program in just a second, but first, an absolutely outrageous profit timeout. You are listening to Cowboy State Politics Live. You can listen to the program on YouTube, on Facebook, on X, on Rumble, pretty much everywhere. It's almost like I'm omnipresent. If you miss an episode of Cowboy State Politics Live, you can always go to the live replay, which is located at the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, under the live replay button. You can listen to Cowboy State Politics Live every Tuesday through Friday at 8 a.m. You can listen to the Cowboy State Politics podcast anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest place is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles that I might bring up during the course of a program. That way, if your name is Joe Biden and you can't remember if you had your pudding today, well, I probably can't help you with that, but I can definitely tell you why you should have never ran for president. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program. David Iverson, Cowboy State Politics Live on YouTube, on Facebook, on X, on Rumble. It's almost like I'm omnipresent. Welcome back to the program, my friends. Now, I've been telling you all week that starting next Tuesday, I'm going to be unveiling a brand new look, a brand new feel, and also a brand new studio for Cowboy State Politics Live. It's I am so excited to tell you about it. And tomorrow I'm going to make sure that I get you some pictures of just kind of a little sneak peek of what it looks like. It is absolutely incredible, and I cannot wait to show you. There's so many things that I've been wanting to do with the program for a really long time, and I just have not had the ability to do it. Well, we fixed that, and we're going to take podcasting to a whole new level that, frankly, I don't think anybody else has done or is capable of doing. And it's going to be absolutely incredible, my friends. You're not going to believe how different the program looks. And anyway, we're going to do that next Tuesday. So pay attention to the program tomorrow, or probably on the website. I'll throw up some pictures of what the new place is going to look like, just a couple of them, so that you get an idea of what's coming next week. Now, on April Fool's Day, one of my the favorite meme I saw is that and it said, quote, President Trump is abandoning the presidency in favor of a far more powerful position as a U.S. District Court judge. The irony being is that judges do not have that jurisdiction. But in the last couple of years, we have watched district judges enact nationwide injunctions, nationwide orders. Now, typically, a district judge only has jurisdiction over whatever area they're in. And that's it. It doesn't affect the whole country. But if it were taken up on appeal and the appeals court issued a ruling, and then perhaps if it were taken to the Supreme Court, then it would definitely have a nationwide impact. But right now, we have a number of district judges that are just ad hoc delivering nationwide decisions. Now, how is it that one little district judge in a far-flung place in the country can issue a ruling for the rest of the entire United States? It doesn't make any sense, and it's not how our system is set up. And frankly, district judges don't have that authority. The problem is that Congress has not acted to deprive them of that authority. It's always just been kind of a tradition, a precedent, whatever you want to call it. But now, district judges like Edward Chen have decided that they can make rulings across the entire country. From The Blaze, in an article entitled, Judge Blocks Trump Administration from Ending Protected Status for Venezuelans because, listen to this, it smacks of racism. We're not ruling based on the law. Nope, we're ruling on Edward Chen's feelings. And I quote, U.S. District Judge Edward Chen in San Francisco on Monday blocked the Trump administration from ending temporary protected status for hundreds of thousands of Venezuelan nationals living in the United States. Under the Biden administration, TPS eligibility was drastically expanded to foreign nationals from several countries, including Afghanistan, El Salvador, Haiti, Honduras, and Ukraine. Quote, we follow the rule of law and not some advice from an activist judge who makes a foolish ruling. Through two separate designations in 2021 and 2023, the Biden administration granted TPS temporary protected status to roughly 600,000 Venezuelan nationals in the U.S., allowing them to apply for work authorizations and avoid deportation. These designations were set to expire on April 7th and September 10th. On his way out of office, Biden extended these dates for nearly 1 million foreign nationals. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem moved to undo these last-minute extensions, reversing protections for the 350,000 Venezuelans whose status is scheduled to expire in April. She also announced a reversal for another 250,000 Venezuelans whose TPS will end in September. The move sparked a legal challenge brought by the National TPS Alliance. Of course, they have their own organization. Everybody's got their own lobbying group. On Monday, Chen blocked Trump's DHS from stripping the protections, claiming that it smacks of racism. Well, while it may or may not smack of racism, that is not a legal principle. It's not a law. I mean, Chen is not pointing to any particular law that says you can't do this because it's racist. That law doesn't exist. Chen is operating on his own feelings, which is how the rest of the country has been operating for a really long time. Let's see here. The secretary, and here's Chen's order. Quote, acting on the basis of a negative group stereotype and generalizing such stereotype to the entire group is the classic example of racism. The secretary's rationale is entirely lacking in evidentiary support. There is no evidence that Venezuelan TPS holders are members of Tren de Aragua, have connections to the gang, or commit crimes. Venezuelan TPS holders have lower rates of criminality than the general population. Generalization of criminality to the Venezuelan TPS population as a whole is baseless and smacks of racism predicated on generalized false stereotypes. None of that is rooted in law. It is an assumption. And I think if you just pay attention to any of the news reports of crime happening because that's been perpetrated by illegal aliens, it does not they do not have a lower crime rate than the general population. Not that any of that analysis even figures into the decision. Judges are required to rule on the law, not on their feelings. And this is what I talked about yesterday on the program, that we have become a nation of laws or a nation of men and not a nation of laws. Edward Chen is ruling based on his own personal predilections and his own personal feelings. And his decision blatantly says that I'm going to rule against this because I think it's racist. My friends, we are living in a time that is just upside down and backwards. And it is, and you know, I mean, a long time ago, I can't remember, maybe I was watching Glenn Beck, but he had a program and he said, you know, there's going to be a time where everything is going to appear to be upside down and backwards. What is right is going to be said to be wrong, and what is wrong is now going to be right, and you're not going to recognize your country. And I think that we're there. We're absolutely there, my friends. When a judge can look at a group of illegal immigrants, first of all, they've already broken the law by being here. The Biden administration gave them temporary protected status, which doesn't mean that they haven't broken the law. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're legal here. It means that for the time being, they're not going to be deported. And the judge says, well, you can't deport them. You can't take away their temporary protected status because that would be racist. That is not a legal principle. Now, do we have laws that prevent people from acting, in a racist way? Yeah, we have lots of discrimination laws, but that's not what the judge is saying. The judge is not pointing to a legal principle or a law saying you can't discriminate against this group, because of X, Y, or Z. It's just the judge operating on his own personal beliefs. And my friends, like I said, this is all upside down and backwards. It doesn't make any sense to any of us. And I've got a number of stories here that, and we're going to get into it after the break. Actually, you know what? Before I go into the next break, let's go ahead and, before I go into the next topic, let's go ahead and take another break. I've got a cool story about some research being done on Jesus's burial site. Way interesting, my friends. Archaeology at its best. But we'll do that in just a second.
Here at U.S. Coin Capital, we hear from Americans across the United States who have a growing concern about the future purchasing power of U.S. paper money. Many Americans are looking for an alternative for long-term capital. For more than 35 years, the people at U.S. Coin Capital have educated American investors on how to properly accumulate United States gold and silver coins. Call us at 1-800-878-2646 or visit us on the web, uscoincapital.com.
Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics.
Some say standing up for what you believe in is being extreme. Ask any woman in Wyoming. They'll tell you this is called courage. The mainstream media claims that holding the line on important issues is being unreasonable. My mom taught me this is called staying true to our principles. In other places, people argue you always have to compromise to get something done. Here in Wyoming, we know that some things are worth protecting at all costs. Some say it's time we give up on the values that made our state great to accommodate toxic culture. I say it's time to stand tall and protect the values that have served Wyoming well for over 134 years. Join Honor Wyoming as we defend and preserve the Wyoming way of life. Find out how you can make a difference today.
Visit honorwyoming.org. Cowboy State Politics Live. I'm David Iverson, documented to be almost always right 99% of the time. A record that nobody in the mainstream media can even come close to because, well, simply, they don't try. It's just like the story I was talking about before the break. They operate on feelings, not on fact, and that's why trust in the media is going down at a fascinating rate. And here's a perfect example. So all last week, I was telling you about the Sheridan Press and how they printed this false story about the Sheridan GOP. They claimed that the GOP hadn't noticed their meeting properly, and so that they really couldn't hold, legal elections. All of that was bullcrap. They printed the erroneous claim right next to the ad that they're claiming didn't exist. Well, they later kind of retracted it and said, well, we were right about our claim, but technically it still fits the definition. Total BS. Now, their article on Tuesday says, well, we were still right, and, we considered it an advertisement. It wasn't a public notice, just absolute garbage. And because they print crap like that, the trust in the media is at an all-time low. And what it's forcing newspapers like the Sheridan Press to do is to scale back on their publication dates. The Sheridan Press just announced that they're not going to print their paper on Friday anymore. So, and the Pravda on the Platte, same thing. I don't know how many days they actually produce a paper. And there's two factors at work here. First, most people don't get their news from a newspaper anymore because what's already printed in the newspaper has already been published online and, on radio and on TV. So really, there's no reason to buy a paper unless, of course, you just like reading a newspaper. I happen to like reading a newspaper, but the problem is whatever's written in there, I've already seen online. And so there's that playing into it, that it's just not a viable business model anymore. Secondarily, the media lies continually. And it's just about every single day I can pick up at least one news outlet that has something that is, if not provably false, entirely slanted in one direction, or, it's absolutely got an agenda. And make no mistake, my friends, the media has an agenda. And it's not to produce facts. It's not to give a particular point of view. They certainly don't do it fairly. It's to push their own agenda, and by and large, that agenda is liberalism. But let's talk about something that should be divorced from politics. And it's interesting I chose to use the word divorce when talking about this story. But anyway, from the New York Post, Jesus' burial site yields new biblical clues about his death, says scientists. And I quote, "They're digging for answers. There's been an ongoing debate for many years over where Jesus was crucified and buried, with many experts believing the site to be on the grounds of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem. Now, new archaeological evidence might confirm their belief to be true. A team of researchers at Sapienza University of Rome recently found remains of a plant, possibly the same plant referenced in John chapter 19, verse 41, that dates to the time of Jesus' death, which is believed to have happened around 33 AD. To be more specific, the Gospel of John 19:41 reads, quote, "Now in the place where he was crucified, there was a garden, and in the garden a new sepulchre, wherein was never a man yet laid. There laid Jesus." There they laid Jesus. The Gospel maintains a green area between Calvary and the tomb, and we identified these cultivated fields. Francesca Romana Stasola, lead archaeologist for the Times of Israel. The plant remains are not the only confirmation that the Holy Sepulchre played a large role in Jesus' history. The researchers uncovered other findings that seem connected to Jesus, including tombs on the Holy Sepulchre compound. The uncovered marble tombs have a lot to do with Joseph of Arimathea, the biblical figure Christians believe gifted Jesus his burial plot, as explained by the Times of Israel. Stasola and her crew plan to do additional testing on the marble tomb to hopefully reveal more coveted information about Jesus' death. Quote, "We are conducting a geological analysis to verify the origin of the marble, and we are also testing the mortar," she said. "Both tests can give us important information." There was a great series, or a great special, not a series, that was put out by Fox Nation around Easter last year, and Pete Hegseth, I think it's Pete Hegseth, takes a tour around the Holy Land, and right at the end, he goes to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and meets with an archaeologist that has another theory about where Jesus was buried. And they go look at a tomb that was pretty close to Golgotha, and Golgotha was the hill that's listed in the Bible where Jesus was crucified. The theory this guy has is, well, he was buried in a tomb that's not far from Golgotha, and this hill appears to fit the description in the Bible of what that hill looked like. So this is a fascinating time to be alive, my friends, where we can uncover, mysteries of the past and verify them. There have been a lot of things in the Bible in the last, a couple of years that have been proven to be true. And there are some things that continue to be a mystery. I mean, as far as I know, nobody's located Noah's Ark, though there's a number of people that say that they found it in Turkey. Well, in any case, a cool time to be alive that we can investigate, the historical, have one of the most significant historical events in our history, in my opinion, the most important historical event. But fascinating time to be alive. Very cool. I'll keep following that story. Anytime I see anything come up, I'll make sure that I bring it to you. From the Blaze, here we go, beginning the stories that are completely upside down and backwards. And, in this case, and we haven't done this for a while, at least for a couple of episodes, but let's have a Things That Go Boom segment.
That's great! That's what
In an article entitled CBS News Crushed on Social Media for Absurd Claim About Mass Shootings. And I quote, "Critics needed only 4 seconds of mathematical analysis to contradict the narrative. A CBS News article promulgated an irrational claim about mass shootings in the U.S. and was immediately mocked and ridiculed by those with at least a modicum of elementary math training. The article from Sarah Horbasewicz, repeated a claim that 1 out of every 15 adults has been at a mass shooting, but then offered zero critical analysis of that statistic. A University of Colorado study arrived at the same claim by defining a mass shooting as an incident where 4 or more people had been shot. Now, again, think about this. In your neighborhood, and I don't know, looking out the window, I mean, there's probably 50 to 75 houses where our house is at in Sheridan. That would mean, let's see here, 30 and 60, that's 4. Yeah. So that would mean that about 8 people had been at a mass shooting where 4 people had been shot. Absolutely ridiculous. The rest of the article was an appeal to the emotions that covered recent developments in a 2021 mass shooting at a King Soopers grocery store in Boulder, Colorado. The claim received far more scrutiny from online critics of the media and defenders of the Second Amendment. Quote, 4 seconds of critical thinking and math tell me that it is not at all possible that 17.3 million adults in the U.S. have witnessed a mass shooting, responded investigative reporter Parker Thayer. Quote, their methodology's a mess. They're using a crazy broad definition of a mass shooting, lumping it in neighborhood shootouts and vague public space criteria that obviously juice up the exposure rates. They lean on online panels from YouGov, no less, that probably don't adjust the overrepresented exposure groups. Demographics skew who uses these panels. Self-reported lifetime exposures full of recall errors and murky immediate vicinity interpretations with zero verification. The press and the people feeding it, usually the Gun Violence Archive, have been slowly escalating these completely ridiculous claims, and now they've arrived here, said Charles C.W. Cook of National Review. Anti-gunners gleefully sharing this are the same people who shriek with rage when some survey data on the high end shows 3 million Americans have used a gun for self-defense. That's according to attorney Costas Moros. A separate analysis of mass shooting statistics from the Cato Institute found that 298 mass murderers were responsible for 1,733 murders in the 58 years between 1966 and 2024. Cato found the annual chance of being murdered in a mass shooting was about 1 in 9.1 million. In other words, it is probably easier to be struck by lightning, if not once, perhaps twice, than to be involved or even be around a mass shooting. Anti-gunners, all the time, they inflate statistics to try to convince you that there's this rampant gun violence happening across the country. And the truth is, there's just not. The reason why it appears that way is the media. The media is far more pervasive than it was, definitely 10 and certainly 20 years ago. You just hear about it more loudly. I mean, we live in a big country, my friends, with over 330 million people. And the truth is, there are not that many incidents where a gun is used in a crime or a gun is used to kill somebody in a crime. That's just not the case. And it is far fewer that guns are used in that a mass shooting event even happens or that the number of people actually involved. In the same vein, Representative Eric Burleson has continued his abolish the ATF. In fact, he posted the other day that a meme that said the ATF is not your friend. And they're not, my friends. It is a federal agency whose sole mission it is to infringe on the Second Amendment. Let's be very clear. The Second Amendment says shall not be infringed, which means Congress should make no law. You can't infringe on a protected right that says shall not be infringed. In any case, Representative Eric Burleson continued his fight to abolish the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms by using an ex-post on Wednesday to remind Americans that the ATF is not your friend. Burleson's post also stated, quote, a free country doesn't need a gun control enforcement agency, which is literally what the ATF is. His post referenced the most recent in a long line of statements calling for the federal agency to be abolished. On November 25th, Breitbart News reported that Burleson called the ATF a disaster, explaining that for several decades they've been a disaster agency that has been violating the Second Amendment. On the 13th, also Breitbart noted that Burleson's claims that the ATF uses tax money to violate your rights in a post on X. Quote, the ATF uses your tax dollars to violate your constitutional right. Does that sound like freedom to you? And it goes on. Now, just to give you an example of how goofed up, how screwed up, how words that I'm not going to say on my program, the ATF is. Here is Jake Elzy questioning the now former head of ATF. Listen to this.
What could you, in 15 seconds, would you define an assault weapon for me?
So
if you go past 15 seconds, I'll just interrupt you.
no, so I'll go shorter than that because I honestly, I do think that's if Congress wishes to take that up, I think Congress would have to do the work, but we would be there to provide technical assistance. Unlike you, I'm not a firearms expert to the same extent as you may be, but we have people at ATF who can talk about velocity of firearms, what damage different kinds of firearms cause, so that whatever determination you chose to make would be an informed one.
Did you go to Harvard Law School?
I might have to plead guilty.
All right.
I'm sorry.
So you're the head of the ATF, and you don't know that an assault weapon is an absolutely made-up thing. That's not a thing. Assault weapons do not exist. That is a term created by the left to scare people. You may as well call it a scary-looking weapon instead of just an assault weapon. But the head of the ATF, he can't even tell, and he's probably not going to tell Jake Ellzey, that he doesn't know what an assault weapon is. And he goes on to say, well, you know, it has a lot to do with velocity and the power of the weapon. And absolutely ridiculous. It's all gobbledygook, and he has no idea what he's talking about. Well, here's the same guy, the former head of the ATF, talking to Senator Tom Cotton. Listen to this.
So you're running for public office, and you called for a ban on assault weapons, but you don't have a definition for assault weapons?
Senator, it would only be for a legislative body, whether it was the Ohio legislature or the Congress. It would only be for a legislative body to do that work. And I acknowledge that would be a difficult task to define assault weapons, because on one hand, you don't want it to be so narrow that it doesn't offer the protections that are intended. And on the other hand, you certainly don't want it to be so broad so that it infringes unnecessarily on the rights of citizens.
Head of the ATF doesn't know what the heck he's talking about. We shouldn't expect anything less from the federal government, my friends. We need to get rid of the ATF. They're not needed, and they violate your constitutional rights every time they walk out the door. We'll finish up in a minute. It's spring-ish in Wyoming. Well, what that means for the uninitiated is that it's going to be 70 degrees one day and then snow 1.5 feet the next. And really, if you don't like those two options, just wait a little bit. The weather will change. I know, it sounds a little stressful, but really you should put your mind at ease and buy a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They'll keep you warm and dry even on the nastiest, coldest spring-ish day, and they'll keep you cool and dry even when it's 75 and sunny. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you're not going to be disappointed. Are you one of those people that said something like this before Trump became president?
I have a house in Spain that is going to be ready right after the election. Siberia.
Nova Scotia.
I'm definitely moving to Canada. Straight to hell. Iceland. France. Asia's pretty cool.
And has the past 5 weeks just been more than you could bear? If that's the case, you have come to the right place. All you need to do is call my friend Rebecca Bextel at Compass Real Estate. She has her fingers on the pulse of the real estate market all across the state of Wyoming. Last year, she sold around $30 million worth of property. Everything from small residential properties all the way up to big giant ranches. So if you've got to get the heck out of Dodge, if you've got to be gone Johnson because you can't stand that Trump is the president, call Rebecca Bextel. Her phone number is 307-699-3519. Let me say that one more time for you in case you missed it. 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never
boy, state politics is only going to continue to expand. It starts next Tuesday, my friends. Oh, I can't wait to tell you about it. I can't wait to show you. It is going to be amazing. Welcome back to the show, my friends. Now, as I've been teasing throughout today's program, I woke up this morning and, started to finish up the show prep, and it appears that the world is, and I've known this for a while, and I'm sure you're getting the same feeling too, that it is just completely upside down and backwards. And you have complete agencies that completely ignore the rule of law because, maybe they just think that they don't have to pay any attention to it. And maybe that's the case. But here's one from Project Veritas. Now, of course, we haven't heard from them for a while. They canned our pal James O'Keefe, and so they've been kind of quiet for a while, but apparently not so much anymore. From Project Veritas, NASA and State Department employees are rebranding DEI to defy Trump's orders. Again, who saw this coming? And I quote, President Trump wasted no time in his second term signing a series of executive orders on his first day in office aimed at dismantling diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives across the federal government. The orders, which ban the use of federal funds for DEI programs and prohibit training or policies promoting what the administration calls divisive concepts, in quotation marks, mark a significant rollback of initiatives championed by previous administrations. Trump hailed the move as a return to merit-based governance, arguing that DEI efforts foster division rather than unity. However, Project Veritas has uncovered how some government employees are already plotting to defy these directives, concealing banned initiatives under new names and finding creative ways to work around the rules. This is the same thing that I talked about with, and you remember a couple of years ago actually it was a couple of sessions ago when the legislature told the University of Wyoming, yeah, we're done with DEI. Now, the university's response was to close those departments. Okay, fine, great, they did a good job there. But if you notice, nobody really got fired. They just reassigned those employees elsewhere. So what's to stop them from doing the same type of thing in a different department? Well, I mean, if you're the radical that populated the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Office at the University of Wyoming, and you've been moved from that department to another department, more than likely, you're going to be doing the same thing, which is exactly what employees at NASA have been doing. Listen to this. It's a little piece from Project Veritas. I don't know how far we'll go, but go ahead and take a listen from it.
President Trump's deadline for federal offices to end their diversity, equity, and inclusion programs is fast approaching.
DEI is seemingly dead.
On Tuesday, President Donald Trump signed a series of executive orders eliminating diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI, government programs.
It has to go away from here now, DEI stuff.
The same thing happened the last time, because I was already working for the government when Trump was president last time. They canceled DEI and stuff, but people just did it and called it something else. Just worked around the rules.
Now we have to be careful with writing proposals with terms like climate change and whatever. Well, they don't like that term, they don't believe in that, and they will probably not fund any of that. We can change the term climate change by natural hazards or something like that. But, yeah.
Okay, all right. The soundbite goes on for a solid 3 or 4 minutes, but it's exactly what you would expect. The administration says, no, you're not going to do this anymore. And agencies, because they've never really had any accountability before, just say, well, yeah, we're not going to do that. In fact, we're going to do exactly the opposite of what we've been told. And again, this is just another case of who saw this coming. But, when you have employees at NASA, and by the way, why is NASA worried about diversity, equity, and inclusion? There's a great report. I watched it, a week and a half ago, but it's on The Blaze. And it's this whole expose of the DEI initiative that has been clothed in this whole let's go to the moon type of mission. And literally the paperwork that came out of this said, we're going to put the first, and I think it was African-American and first woman on the moon. Had nothing to do with science. It was all DEI focused. We have to put the first woman on the moon. Not the person who's the most qualified, not the best astronaut. Nope. It's all DEI based. And, again, who would have saw that one coming? But here's another one, my friends. Listen to this one. From the Daily Wire. Former high-level Google employee sues, claims discrimination against men. Now, of course, Google is a private company, but they still have to abide by, the 1965 Civil Rights Act, which also covers men, and it does cover white men. Sorry, liberals. It's absolutely the case. And I quote, a male employee of Google who stated he served in such high-capacity jobs as a global business leader and head of industry media platforms has sued the company, alleging that he and other male employees were discriminated against because they were men. The suit from former employee Marco Meyer accuses Marta Martinez, a managing director for sales at Google, of making statements such as, quote, the women on my team have better leadership skills and are better prepared, and, quote, men are too aggressive and competitive. The suit alleges that Meyer and all male leaders in Martinez's department, quote, endured a relentless campaign of hostile and disparate treatment, severe harassment, and discrimination based on gender. Indeed, over the course of a 4-year period, the plaintiff witnessed the nefarious and systematic elimination of each male team member, reporting to defendant Martinez, all of whom were exclusively replaced with female team leaders. Plaintiff and all male team members were continuously restricted from providing their insight during meetings, were issued lower performance reviews, while female team members were provided higher reviews without a basis for it, were repeatedly denied large-scale influential projects, while such projects were provided to lesser qualified female team members. The plaintiffs and all male team members were continuously denied promotions, while female team leaders were reportedly rapidly promoted. So, again, another case of who saw this coming, that a big company that has clothed itself in DEI for, I don't know how long. But, you pull up Google and their little graphic. it's all the time. During June, everything is trying to convince you that it's Pride Month, which is ridiculous. And, just another case of who saw this coming. But this one should make you laugh. From the Daily Caller. A far left pundit says that all laws passed before 1965 should be presumptively unconstitutional. Now, normally, we wouldn't give two craps about what a leftist professor says or claims or even writes. Who gives a crap? But the interesting part about this is he said it on that far left, hard-hitting news program, The View. And I quote, the nation's justice correspondent, The Nation is a magazine. Nobody reads it anymore, but it was a pretty prominent magazine. Anyway, their justice correspondent, Eli Mistal, told The View co-host on Tuesday that all laws passed before the 1965 Voting Rights Act should be deemed, quote, presumptively unconstitutional. Listen to this crap. Wherever it was, let's see here. Whoa, hold on just a second. But this is just another case of feelings. We started out the program talking about how a judge said, well, Trump can't do that because it's racist. Well, this is another case of that. Because I think that all the laws, this professor is saying, or this correspondent for The Nation, is claiming that, well, anything passed before the 1965 Civil Rights Act has to be racist and therefore has to be called unconstitutional. Here he is saying it.
Introducing the UNGA, the non-lethal self-defense platform.
You are dead on, and it is a fantastic book. One of the laws you write about is playing out right now, the Immigration and Nationality Act. Now, this administration is using this statute to justify the detentions and possible deportations, actually, of Visa and Green Card holders who they seem to deem a threat to U.S. foreign policy. What do you make of the administration's use of the act? And more broadly, is Trump really setting up a First Amendment showdown, which is what Whoopi's been talking about?
Yes, absolutely. One of my premises for the book is that every law passed before the 1965 Voting Rights Act should be presumptively unconstitutional, right? But because before the 1965 Voting Rights Act, we were functionally an apartheid country. Yeah. Not everybody who lived here could vote here. So why should I give about some law that some old white man passed in the 1920s, like the Immigration and Nationality Act. When they passed our fundamental immigration law, the Congress said in real time that they needed the law to...
But anyway, so every law passed before 1965, because he thinks it's racist, has to be declared presumptively unconstitutional, is what he says. Just absolutely incredible. And that a major news outlet, I know, we have to use a loose definition of the term major, but it's one of the big news outlets, puts this guy on and talks about whether or not every law before 1965 is unconstitutional. Absolutely incredible, my friends. But, looking at the stack of stuff, I've got more stories that are just like this. One that we didn't get to, and probably it's probably a good thing, but Neil Young has said that President Trump is the worst president in history, but he's going to ban or jail Neil Young. I don't think the president, I don't think he really gives two craps what Neil Young says, nor should anybody else. Well, we'll be back tomorrow with Open Line Friday. Make sure that you don't miss it. I'll take your calls, whatever's on your mind, we will talk about it. Normally during the week, if you want to call in, kind of need to talk about what I'm talking about, but not on Friday. On Friday, we'll take your calls. That all starts tomorrow. But for now, from the base of the Bighorns, I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy State Politics. See you tomorrow, my friends.